people need to consider what the homes are selling for in the area, what they're hoping to achieve. So for example, if you have a home that's in, let's just say, a $500,000 neighborhood, and you think that updating your kitchen at a cost of, let's say, $50,000 is going to achieve you $550,000, it very well may. A 10% increase is not unreasonable. But if you're going to put $150,000 into your home thinking you're going to get $650,000 in a $500,000 neighborhood, you have now over improved your property. You've surpassed and achieved a point of diminishing return.
In a market defined by uncertainty, where every second counts, one opportunity can change everything. Welcome to the Dream is Real podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Dream is Real podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Billy Clark. Joining us today is Anthony Legotti, founder of Maven Appraisals in New York City. Anthony brings more than 25 years of experience in the valuation profession. He holds a prestigious MAI designation from the Appraisal Institute. Throughout his career, Anthony has valued a wide range of property types, including multifamily, office, industrial, rental, and residential properties, providing clients with well-supported services across diverse markets. Anthony Legotti, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. How did you get into appraisal? It's such an interesting industry.
So there's only really two ways people generally come into the industry. They either know someone that's already appraising, or they meet an appraiser through the course of their own personal refinance or some sort of personal interaction with an appraiser. No one decides they want to be an appraiser when they grow up.
Right. What did you want to be when you grew up?
Yeah, still trying to figure that out. But yeah, so I had a good friend of mine that was a real estate appraiser. We played ice hockey together at the time, and it was the early 2000s. Things were picking up a bit. He needed a little bit of help, and so I started out in the residential world with him back in 2000, 2001 timeframe.
Interesting. Do you do commercial as well?
So commercial is my primary niche. I'm very fluent in both property types, but commercials, are preferred bread and butter.
What is the challenge between residential and commercial appraisal?
The biggest difference is the motivations of the market participants, right? So when you have residential home ownership, they're considering things like number of bedrooms for the size of the family, the school district, things like that, where commercial real estate is primarily investment driven. So the location is only a part of the component. The rental income, the operating expenses, things like that are something that is more of a driver for the buyers and sellers.
Interesting. Thank you very much for that. I want to touch upon, before we started this, I asked you about the MAI, right? So the designation that you hold, and people think it stands for Member Appraisal Institute. Prove them wrong.
Yeah, so the MAI designation doesn't actually stand for anything. It's not an acronym. It's part of the Appraisal Institute. Was formed with the merger of two organizations back in the early 90s when the Appraisal Institute first became regulated. I'm sorry, the appraisal industry first became regulated. So the MAI designation's been around, prior to that, and it is the highest level of education and experience that you can have in the appraisal industry.
Does it help you? Obviously, it helps you. Is that correct in your career?
Yes. There's less than 6,000 of us in the United States.
Really?
Yeah.
What's the process of retaining this?
So you have to go through a very long process in order to first achieve it. And then once you have it, there's some reoccurring continuing education that's required with the institute itself.
Interesting. Thank you so very much. And what is the biggest misconceptions people have about appraisals?
I think that there's a lot of people that have opinions, personal opinions about their property and what it's worth. And sometimes they're not always incorrect, but there needs to be an understanding that we're limited by the available data. While it's nice to think you have a property worth X number of dollars, if the data in the market area only supports a certain amount, we're all going to be kind of limited to that, especially when you have something that is a little bit nicer than those in the surrounding area.
Right. And I'm assuming that's where empathy and being sensitive, right? Because you don't want to upset them and they've worked so hard for their home. So how do you handle that with a client?
So I try to manage expectations early. If we're looking at certain price points in that market area, and if we're doing an inspection, whether it's myself or somebody else from my company, and they're pointing out certain items within the home or within the building that they think may drive value, we may have to manage their expectations and explain, well, yes, these are all valid points, but there's a certain point of diminishing returns where while putting a certain improvement in or a certain amenity doesn't necessarily mean you're going to achieve what you hoped or thought you would in an appraisal anyway.
We spoke about that before. So do you recommend somebody putting in $60,000 into their kitchen before they sell their home?
So it's all relative. And I think number one, people need to consider what the homes are selling for in the area, what they're hoping to achieve. So for example, if you have a home that's in, let's just say a $500,000 neighborhood, and you think that updating your kitchen at a cost of, let's say, $50,000 is going to achieve you $550,000, it very well may. A 10% increase is not unreasonable. But if you're going to put $150,000 into your home thinking you're going to get $650,000 in a $500,000 neighborhood, you have now over improved your property. You've surpassed and achieved a point of diminishing returns. So while the improvements absolutely will generate a higher dollar value, it has to be relative to what is customary to that area.
Very interesting. Walk us through appraisal. I'm your client. I'd like to know, what is the process of this?
So the first thing I need to find out is, what is the purpose of your appraisal, right? Are you trying to get a mortgage loan? Are you in the middle of divorce? Do you have estate taxes you need to settle? Are you grieving your real estate taxes? These are all reasons for a real estate appraisal. So once we've identified the purpose of the appraisal, we can then start the appraisal process, which would begin first with researching the history of the subject property, then researching the market area to kind of determine what we think is going on in that particular neighborhood based on that asset class as well, right? Whether you have a single family, commercial, retail store, office building, all those asset classes may be operating very differently in those particular areas just based on what's going on with the market.
Right.
So, we'll take a look at that, and then we'll do an inspection on the property. The inspection is primarily visual in nature. We're not engineers. We're not licensed home inspectors. We're not there to identify, all these little things that those professionals are licensed to do. We're there just to make sure that the property itself is maintained in overall average condition, overall good condition, things like that. Then we'll take our research combined with the inspection and look to start to assemble some sort of value to the property. Part of that process is the highest and best use as well, which most single family homes have already been built to that. But sometimes, especially with commercial real estate, you'll see, what used to be a retail property has, met its life expectancy, right? So you'll see some vacant retail or office buildings, and really because that particular neighborhood has evolved, and now that property type is no longer necessary in that area. So, we would look through that process, the highest and best use analysis, to determine what, if any, future use based on the zoning, might be the best move next, right? So once we decide that and we look at comparables, right, with residential, it's primarily comparable sales because that's the motivation of those participants. With commercial, we'd be looking at a lot of rental income and operating expenses, things like that. And then ultimately determine an indicated market value.
It's a process.
It is a standardized process, that's correct.
What is the delay? Any delays that happen? The most common delays? Inspection, perhaps?
Yeah, so that is by far our biggest hurdle, especially when we're dealing with multifamily properties, because a lot of the lenders now want every room in every building inspected. And when you have an 8 or 12 unit building, it's extremely difficult to get all the tenants on the same page. So those types of properties, based on the lender requirements, could take a while to get done.
And let's talk about agents. What do they go through when things are getting appraised?
So I'm a licensed real estate agent myself, have been for 20 something years. I do think that there's a huge benefit in being both an agent and an appraiser because I understand both sides of the transaction. So, for an agent, they've put a lot of work and time into this deal with the potential for it to fall apart at any moment. And so where agents can be helpful for appraisers is if while they may have access to certain units, before we get there, they may be able to provide us with some information, photographs or otherwise, with that particular unit. So, we would still need to inspect it, but if we have issues getting in, maybe the lender would accept the fact that we had, inspection photos from the broker, obviously if everything's disclosed properly.
Right.
Comparable data is helpful as well. We're usually looking at the same stuff, but, it's always nice when an agent or a broker wants to provide us some stuff that we can, possibly use in the report, things like that. So that's typically how we interact with the agents.
Lovely. And do you have any advice for a new agent coming in who wants to get into appraise? Because it's pretty interesting.
We don't see a lot of crossover, surprisingly. I think there should be. I'd like to see more agents kind of come over, but it's just not really designed that way. People tend to be one or the other. Personality is usually a little bit different as well. Most agents are a little bit more outgoing, sales oriented, where most appraisers are a little more introverted and more focused on statistics, numbers, things like that. So you don't see a lot of crossover, but I think that if agents had an interest in becoming appraisers or supplementing it, there are some out there. Those tend to be more successful in both areas because now they understand, what the limitations are in either scenario.
What do you like about your job? Do you like real estate better than appraising, or
Well, appraising really has been it's problem solving, right? So there is some satisfying element to that when you can take a bunch of data and put it together in a certain order to show what your opinion is and be able to support that. There's some satisfaction in that in the appraisal work, but it's also very difficult position to be in because, again, a lot of times people say, "Hey, what do you specialize in?" And it's like bad news, because we can't always tell people exactly what they want to hear. So going back to earlier, managing those expectations as soon as possible is really what we try to do.
Right. It's challenging. What is the most challenging part of appraising a property?
I think when it comes to challenging, it's when you have something that is not similar to other things in the area, right? So you have the largest home on the block. You have, a property that's in an industrial zone. It's a residential property in industrial zoning. We just did one of those recently in California. So when you have some sort of anomaly to the property, whether it's the layout, the zoning, or the size of the building itself, those present challenges because you're going to have limited data to support your opinion. And your research is going to take a lot longer, and you're going to end up in more conversations about how and why you think this is that price point.
Interesting. And you're in 43 states?
We're in 46 currently. We're working on the last 4 licenses now.
And what is the difference between the states? With the laws, is there anything different?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the requirements for appraising are standardized.
Right.
So it's the same in each state. However, certain states have additional law courses that we're required to take. I'm required to take. So those additional courses, I do a lot of continuing education in order to maintain all these licenses nationwide. But yeah, so there are some nuances. The appraisal process itself is the same, but we definitely have to make sure that I am on top of all the nuances in each state.
This is a tough job, Anthony, right? It's a tough job. You really have to be on your game.
Yeah. Well, anyone that's in an enforcement type position is always going to be questioned, right? There's always going to be 50% of the people involved that are going to disagree with your opinion. So you have to have thick skin. You have to be prepared to hold your ground, and you have to be able to, again, manage expectations with the people involved so that hopefully everyone, at least if they disagree with you, at least understand why.
Right. Interesting. I love it. And I love this question here. What trends are you seeing in commercial real estate valuation right now?
So the question has a few answers to it, right? Depending on the property type, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're asking me about valuation itself, the process is growing, evolving. AI has now become part of kind of our analysis. So for us specifically, again, because you use the term commercial valuation. The process itself, now incorporating things like AI as a tool, it's not solving problems for us, but it's helping us sort data, narrow down data, do a analysis that then still ultimately a human needs to cross-check and decide whether or not it's applicable. But AI has definitely, found its way into our industry for sure.
Absolutely. It's huge.
Yeah.
Right? It'll definitely help. And what advice would you give investors who are evaluating their first commercial property?
So I think investors really, especially if it's their first deal, need to, number one, understand it's not residential. So we deal with a lot of mismanaged expectations because successful investors in the 2 to 4 family market think that they understand multifamily. And the 2 to 4 family market is appraised as residential real estate. The loans are residential loans. The qualifications are all residential oriented. Then when they get into 5 to 12 units, which is a niche we've seen quite a bit of lately, they don't understand that now we're dealing with different operating expenses. We have property management that's in play. You might have a super in a 12-unit building, and the buyers and sellers for that are looking at different expenses that you don't typically see in a 2 to 4 family. So I would say that for the investors that are trying to jump from residential into multifamily, specifically commercial, they really need to understand that there's some additional operating expenses and some more specific investment terms, such as capitalization rates, that those types of investors are considering.
When you're doing your job, who do you rely on the most?
My peers,
Yeah.
because if there's something I haven't come across before, I can reach out to another MAI and they likely have seen it or know someone that has. And so when I'm faced with challenges that are new to me, that's really the best way to solve them, is to reach out to other peers around the country that hold the same designation, that have the experience to be able to help me with those things.
So it's not really a competitive field like real estate.
It depends on who you are and where you're working, right? So like certain markets, it becomes a little more competitive, right? Like there's a lot of MAIs in New York, there's a lot of MAIs in LA, there's a lot of MAIs in Florida. So there is a fine line between competition and colleague, but I think overall, because it's a service-based profession, I would consider most of my peers colleagues as versus competitors.
I like that very much. I always like to be sensitive when it comes to working with peers and having respect, but also being competitive and reaching for your goal, right?
Yeah. Like I said, I think me personally, I think I have a good relationship with other MAIs. So.
Yeah, you seem very lovely to get along with.
Thank you. Yeah.
Where do you see appraisal going 5 years from now down the road? Because now AI is really going to explode. I mean, we're just seeing the beginning of it. So what do you think?
So I think for the 5 and maybe even 10-year time frame, there's still going to be a human element to it. There really needs to be. The appraisal industry exists because of the law passed in 1989, FIRREA, the Financial Institution Reform Recovery Act of '89. That is what created appraisal licensing. So unless that law changes, which is not likely to, because the law was put in place to protect FDIC insured lenders. So I don't see that law changing anytime in the next 5 to 10 years. So I don't see the licensed appraisal industry going away, but I do see AI continuing to create better automated valuation models that will likely be a good cross-check. So it will find its way into the industry more and more, but I don't think it's going to replace us, at least in the next 5 to 10 years.
Absolutely. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Do you want to level up?
So the short answer is yes. I mean, I would hope we all do.
Right.
My personal goals for my business is we're veteran owned and operated, and I primarily hire veterans and train veterans. So I'm hoping to continue to grow that, continue to create more opportunity for vets around the country, and continue to get more people into the profession that just don't know about it.
Right. Well, it's hard for veterans to get jobs.
Well, they just it's not, they don't know where to look sometimes, right? And again, the appraisal industry is not something anyone would think about doing, right? So like if you're serving in the U.S. military and you depending on your job type, may not think about real estate appraising at all. But the big parallel between both is that in the military, attention to detail is extremely important.
Yes.
And that's literally drilled into us on day one of boot camp. And the appraisal, in my opinion, the appraisal industry is very similar, right? Attention to detail. You got to pay attention to this rent, that rent, the lease. Why is this comp a little funny? Why does this one seem to work out well? It's all those little details that really come out in an appraisal report. So I think the skill set that military veterans have transitions very well to appraising. That just needs to be articulated.
When did you start working with veterans?
So I'm a veteran myself.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So joined the U.S. Air Force back in 2004. Been Guard Reserve ever since. And when I started to grow my business nationally, which was about 4 or 5 years ago, that's when I started to incorporate veterans into that growth.
Thank you so much, Anthony. Where can people find you?
So we have our website, mavenvaluation.com. That's really the best place to find information about us and my contact information.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode. Please click like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, reminding you the dream is real.